Today's lesson is on disaster weather. We're continuing our unit on natural phenomena. Previously, we discussed weather, seasons, and climate, and now we're talking about when weather becomes destructive or dangerous. So that's basically what disaster weather is. All right, so just to review what weather is in general, weather is a state of the atmosphere or sky at any given moment for a particular location. So weather includes temperature, wind, speed, wind pressure, moisture in the air or humidity, cloud formations or lack thereof if it's a clear day, and the activity of the sun. Okay, so that ties into temperature, right? The activity of the sun. And so weather changes from moment to moment, minute to minute, hour to hour, day by day. So when you think of weather, just know that it changes. It's not really constant. We can predict the weather through the study of meteorology, but even that isn't an exact science because weather is pretty it's stable in a sense, but it can also vary a lot just based on the conditions described. So here's some examples of common weather phenomena. It might be hot, warm, or cold. You can have sunny weather, cloudy weather, overcast weather, rain, thunder, snow, frost, fog, wind, or strong wind. It can be a clear sky. You might have a rainbow if it's just previously rained or rained lightly. And so, but we're going to focus on disaster weather. So as I mentioned earlier, disaster weather is hazardous weather. It's weather that is destructive and dangerous. Disaster weather is, it's not as common, honestly, but when it does occur, it is not safe for us to be in such conditions. So you might know that disaster weather tends to occur in certain times of the year. So here in Southern California, one of the main disaster weathers variations that you'll see is that we have droughts, and we also have fires. And so fires are usually precipitated by extremely warm and dry conditions, which make it really easy, and windy conditions, I should add, which makes it really easy for a fire to start and spread. So we don't get so much flooding. We might get it in maybe like January through April is when we tend to experience higher levels of rainfall. We don't really have blizzards unless maybe you live in the mountains and you're experiencing a lot of rainfall, which precipitates in the form of rain, or not rain, sorry, snow. And we rarely have tornadoes. I can't recall the last time California had a tornado in the last 10 to 15 years. But other parts of the country, such as Texas, Oklahoma, Kansas, that's known as Tornado Alley. And so they experience tornadoes during certain times of the year for them. So it's really important when a disaster weather occurs to take advised safety precautions. So there is a protocol or a series of steps to take in the event of a fire. Typically, you will be notified beforehand, and you'll have to evacuate the premises. You'll have to leave your home and pack all of your most essential belongings, and you'll have to wait until hopefully the fire doesn't come to your house, or if it does, once the fire marshal and fire chief deem it safe for you to return to your homes. So some examples of disaster weather that I didn't cover are tsunamis, hurricanes, and floods, and also blizzards and droughts, which I did cover, so never mind. All right, so let's talk about some examples of disaster weather. A flood. Floods can happen after heavy rains and or melting snows. And so floods occur when rivers rise and go over their banks. Parts of the country that typically flood are usually along the coast, as well as some areas that are inland but tend to have lots of lakes or rivers or like swampy areas. So you might know that just these past months, really, parts of Texas and Louisiana were flooded after heavy rains. They actually experienced hurricanes which then caused flooding in bayous and lower lying areas of those states. And so floods can they can overwhelm an ecosystem. They can, of course, flood your home so that you are not able to get in. It's really dangerous to be in floodwater because it's dirty. It's mixed with sewage and other debris that have been in the ground, such as chemicals. And so, just like a fire, you'll be warned beforehand. They'll warn you before a flood occurs, or most national weather systems will try to. That way, you're allowed ample time to evacuate, get your belongings, and go to a safer location. All right, there are blizzards. We don't really see blizzards in our part of the country. That happens more towards the Northeast. Maybe parts of Washington might experience blizzards, but that's again normally the Northeast. You want Massachusetts, Vermont, Rhode Island, Connecticut. So a blizzard is a severe snowstorm that usually has very cold temperatures and high winds. These two conditions, really, really cold temperatures and high winds, create blowing snow. And so blizzards are dangerous because snow can pile up and it's really difficult to see. It's really difficult to navigate. It's hard to drive on icy roads. It's not safe unless you have chains on your car, which help you to move through the snow more easily. If you go to parts of Big Bear, they'll require you to have that equipment on your car so that in the event that there is a lot of snowing, not necessarily a blizzard, but a lot of snow, that your vehicle can withstand it and still move. All right, hurricanes, cyclones, and typhoons. Oddly enough, these are all the same phenomena. It just depends on where they occur. So a hurricane is a circular air movement over warm ocean waters in parts of the earth near the equator. So when you think near the equator, if we were to split planet Earth in half horizontally, the equator is the line that separates those two halves. And so for us, the equator is closest to the tropical areas, Florida, Texas, parts of Mexico and Southern California. We're closer to the equator. California doesn't really experience hurricanes, cyclones, and typhoons, but Texas, Florida, Louisiana, Alabama, states like that do. So a hurricane is the name if the storm occurs over the Atlantic and the Northeast Pacific. A cyclone occurs in the South Pacific and Indian Ocean, and a typhoon takes place in the Northwest Pacific. So pretty interesting that these are all the same weather phenomena. Again, that's circular air movement over warm ocean waters. It just depends on where it's at. So those are the main types of disaster weathers. Let me briefly go over this one as well. Tornadoes. Tornado is a tube of violently spinning air that touches the ground and is very dangerous. It's typically caused when warm fronts meet a cold front. And so those two pressure systems create some really unstable conditions that will allow a tornado to form. Again, you probably won't see a tornado here in California, but if you travel across the US, there are definitely places that are more prone to this type of disaster weather. When Miss Morris was a girl, I lived in Texas, and we had frequent tornadoes. And so whenever we heard the sirens in our town, we knew that was our cue to find a safe location. If you had a basement, you would go into a basement. If you didn't, you would go into your bathroom and basically lay down in your tub and hope that the tornado jumped your town and didn't cause a lot of damage. And so luckily enough, it never got too close to where we lived, but it can definitely be scary. And so it's okay to be afraid when disaster weather occurs, but just know that there is specific protocol that your parents and teachers and anyone who takes care of you knows to follow, and that they will assist you in following that in order to get to a safer location.